In The Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 3, Chapter 14. It's November 1st, 8 a.m., Friday morning, at the Gabe Tanner Community Center, Pine Forest, Georgia. Jericho held the door open for Rose as she climbed into his truck, and Rose gave Jericho directions to her favorite coffee house, which was only one street over from Main Street. He looked up at the sign as they drove up and parked out front. Front Porch Coffee, he read aloud. I have to say, that's a great name, and it gives an instant thought of morning coffee on the front porch as neighbors walk by and wave good morning. Rose nodded. It's perfect, isn't it? I love this place. They walked up the sidewalk and up the front porch steps of what obviously used to be an old home. The large wraparound porch was wide and had 6 small round tables, each with 2 chairs, currently all occupied. They headed in. The aromas of fresh brewed coffee and breakfast muffins baking made him smile. Man, it smells good in here. Rose giggled. So good. A woman, about 40-ish, wearing a pink and green striped apron, greeted them with a smile. Hey, good morning, y'all. What can I get for you? I'll have my usual, Rose said. What's your usual? Jericho asked. It's called a coffee float, and it's like this large mug, half filled with soft serve vanilla ice cream, and then they pour the coffee over the ice cream. So yummy, Rose said. You want to try it? He smiled. No, I don't think I can do that yet, he said as he perused the menu above his head. I think I'll do the pumpkin spice special, large, and I'm going to have to try one of those muffins, he said as he pointed to a glass case. Apple cinnamon, banana nut, or cream cheese and chocolate, the woman asked. Banana nut, he answered. Rose? Nope, just the coffee. He paid and they started to step aside, but the woman spoke to Rose. How's your mama? She's okay, but is going to be very happy once those babies get here. Oh, they're here, honey. They just need to come out to play. Rose laughed. Indeed. Let me know if y'all need anything at all. Thanks, Mrs. Parker. And tell Lizzie my mother's making her 2 quilts for the babies. Oh, that is so sweet. I'll tell her. A younger girl at the end of the counter called Rose's name, and Jericho grabbed the tray. Sit where you want. I'll follow, he said. She chose a table next to the large front window. Rose smiled when he offered to hold the chair for her that would put her back to the door, which means he chose the chair that faced the door. He unloaded the tray, took it over to the ledge that held other empty trays, and grabbed a few napkins and a plastic spoon, in case she needed it. She sat down, and she smiled at him. What? He asked. Did I forget something? She shook her head. No, I'm just in my head, comparing you to someone else. Not fair, I know, but hey, unlike my brother, I'm human. Well, now you have me intrigued. Who are you comparing me to? A guy I used to date. Oh, I see. So, am I doing better or worse? She laughed. Better. Much better. Though back when I was dating him, I didn't realize how bad things were. She shrugged. Live and learn. He nodded. Oh, I've lived and learned many times, so I understand completely. He watched her as she lifted her cup and sipped the coffee from around the ice cream. She got a tiny bit of ice cream on the tip of her nose, and he smiled as she grabbed a napkin and wiped it off. So, Jericho Jones, she began, what's on your agenda for the day? Well, I have a few prospects on some lodging for myself and my men, so I'm going to meet with a real estate agent and go see what we can find. I'm guessing you've already tried the inn? Of course. They're booked up solid through Christmas, but I'm sure we'll find something. What's on your agenda? Well, the first and most important thing I need to do is write up several job descriptions before the job interviewees I have scheduled today. What positions are you hiring for? Well, I need a maintenance man desperately. I need 2 more program aides because the center is a lot more popular than we originally assessed. We need 1 program aide for after-school recreation outside, so like a retired PE teacher would be great. And then we need someone for like arts and crafts. But the most important positions we're looking to hire is a behavioral counselor, an assessment counselor, and then need to find some volunteer on-call attorneys. Wow, so you are a very busy lady. She smiled. Does the center take up all your time, or do you find time for a personal life? She raised an eyebrow at him. He shrugged, just asking so I don't become a nuisance. Well, I make time for things that are important, like God, family, and friends. I like the sound of that, he said with a smile. So you like to shoot? What else do you like to do? Let's see. I ride horses. I'm a martial artist. I do lots of yard work, especially now that Gabe is gone. Instead of Dad and Gabe out working on a Saturday morning, it's more like Dad and Rose, and sometimes Lily. Before Mom got pregnant, she used to work in the flower gardens, but Dad says he's going to hire someone for this next spring, and all Mom will have to do is order people around. The only work left to do right now is get up the rest of the leaves. He listened carefully as she went on to speak about things that needed doing at their home, in their community, at the center, and for the church. And when she stopped speaking, he smiled at her. You seem to have a very logical, analytical, and organized mind. She laughed. Why do you say that? Well, you speak about things that need to be done, the time or effort it will take to complete them, and check them off. You seem like a no-nonsense kind of girl. She shrugged. I guess I am. Is that a bad thing? No, it's a great thing. New scene. It's 8:15 a.m. Friday morning, Stewart Ranch, Pine Forest, Georgia. Melena Stewart headed into the house from the kitchen door and headed straight into the den where her mother's bed had been set up for the last several weeks. Hey, Mom, Lena said. Let me wash up and I'll get started on breakfast. And then it's hair washing day, so I'll take out your braid and brush your hair, and maybe I'll give you a mani-pedi today, too. How does that sound? Lisa Stewart looked up at her daughter. It sounds wonderful, sweetie, but I don't think I'm going to be eating any breakfast or getting my hair done. Why not? Don't you feel well? Lena asked, immediately concerned. Well, I want you to stay calm, Bugs, but I'm having strong, regular contractions, and I've put in a call to my doctor, and she should be calling me back any minute. Mom, did you take your meds this morning? Yes, sweetheart, but the doc said there will be a time when the babies are not going to wait any longer. At that moment, Lisa's phone buzzed, and she smiled at her daughter as she picked it up. Hey, Doc, Lisa said casually. Yes, they're strong. Well, they're starting to get painful. About a 5. Chaz is taking the boys to school, but I'll call him. Okay. An ambulance it is. Yes. See you soon. She ended the call and smiled up at her daughter. We're going to have some babies today. Melena nodded. Okay, what do I need to do? Well, the doc wants me to be transported in an ambulance just to be on the safe side, so they will be here shortly. Call your dad for me and then go get my bag that's already packed upstairs. Lena immediately called her father. Hey, Bugs, everything okay? Where are you? I'm about to drop Charlie and Matt off at school. Why? Well, just come back home. Mom's having contractions, and the doc says they're going to deliver the babies today. And Doc is sending an ambulance, just precautionary, so we'll load Mom up and follow behind. Is she in pain? She doesn't seem to be too uncomfortable. So stay calm and get your butt back here. Chaz laughed. It sounds like you're the one that needs to stay calm. How long before you get back, Dad? Less than 10 minutes, Bugs. Stay calm. And keep your mom calm. Go sit next to her and say a prayer. Good idea. I'm doing it. New scene. We're back to front porch coffee. It's 8:33 a.m. Jericho was enjoying himself immensely as he chatted with Rose. She was sharp, bright, lovely to look at, and interesting. He thought of another question, anything to keep her talking. So, let me ask you, when I told my guys about you and your family, one of them said you and your sisters were famous, that you made some commercials. Is that true? I'm just asking because you didn't mention it. She shrugged. Oh, I wouldn't call it famous. The fact that you didn't know about it is evidence of that. We did a media ad for Twin Wave Beauty products, and they went viral, mostly because we're the sisters of the Gabe Tanner. Since then, we've just recently been asked to do other commercials for big companies, and we, my sisters and I, are considering it, not because we care about being famous or being on TV, but It does pay a lot, and we could put that money to good use at the center. He nodded with a smile. I really like the way you think. What do you mean? Well, I mean, you have your priorities straight. You don't seem to buy into the Babylonian culture. Meaning? Well, you aren't obsessed with the pursuit of fame and fortune. Well, yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't impress me, Rose said. The last guy I dated just couldn't understand that. He looked into her eyes. You want to talk about that? She shrugged nonchalantly. Not really, so I'm sorry I mentioned it. It just popped into my mind. But I'll tell you this. He wanted me to be his, well, to let him, how do I say this politely? He wanted me to give myself to him in exchange for him making me famous and rich. He told me to stop being old-fashioned and get over myself. It's the way of the world, and I'd better get on board or be left behind. She quieted, sighed. He realized that obviously she needed to talk about it, even if she didn't want to talk about it. Well, I'm sorry he spoke to you like that. You realize, of course, that what he was saying, it was like Satan promising Jesus the world. She nodded. Yes, I realize it. And that's another thing, really, the straw that broke the camel's back. He compared God to Santa Claus. He was very irreverent about it, knowing how strongly I feel about God. Jericho frowned. So then, what got you interested in this guy in the first place? She sighed. He was a young, good-looking entrepreneur who worked very hard and made something of himself on his own, no father, bought his mother a house. He seemed remarkable. And he was very good at what he did, which was selling. He sold people on people, and I fell for it for a minute. And then he showed his true colors, and I stepped back. It was a learning episode in my life. He nodded. So, tell me, Rose, what would make you happy? Her brows rose, and she looked up into his eyes. Well, that's a mighty deep question for this early in the morning, and I really need to get going. Okay, but just tell me one thing, just one thing that you would like to have in your life. She sighed. I guess I'd like to have a marriage like my parents. My father's the best man I've ever known, and if I could meet and marry a man like him, I know I'd be happy. Jericho smiled. That sounds like a big order. She nodded. Right? Jericho stood and began to gather their cups and napkins. Would you like anything else before we leave this awesome place? She shook her head. Nope, I'm good. But hey, Jericho Jones, thanks for the coffee. Oh, it was definitely my pleasure, Rose. She giggled, and they headed out. They'd just pulled out of their parking space when Rose's phone went off. Noting it was Milena, she answered on speaker. Hey, Bugs, you're on speaker, and I'm with Jericho, so don't say anything rude. Lana laughed. Nothing rude, but something exciting. Guess what I'm doing right now? Brushing Santana? Nope. I'm in the car with Dad and Charlie and Matt and Erin, and we are following behind an ambulance that Mom is in. Oh, Bugs, are you guys on the way to the hospital to have those babies? Yes, Lena said with glee. We are all so excited. Who all knows yet? Aunt Jody and your mom. Well, then that means... Rose stopped talking at the sudden loud scream. Then she heard all kinds of talking and the boys yelling. Lena, what's going on? Lena, talk to me. Oh, God, please help her. Lena, what happened? A truck, a cement truck just hit the ambulance. He just pulled right into them head on. The ambulance had flipped. It flipped a bunch of times. It went down the hill. Oh, no, please, dear Jesus. Lena, where are you? Lena, talk to me. I'll get help. Where are you? Are you on Highway 29? Lena! There was crying and yelling. Lena sniffed loudly. Yes, Rose, help me. We're just past Dad's memorial. Got it. Be right there. She hung up and called 911 and gave them the location. Tell them there are 3 or more adult victims and 2 unborn children, so they will need multiple vehicles, Jericho ordered. Rose nodded and repeated what he said, then hung up and called Daisy and told her what was happening. And Daisy, I need you to call Jody and Gabe and start an emergency prayer circle. Her voice hitched, but she got it under control. I'm headed up there now. She glanced over at Jericho to confirm what she just said, and he nodded at her. She realized he'd immediately turned around and headed toward the highway and was driving very fast. He had also placed a red light on the dashboard. Daisy, I'll let you know something when I know something, Rose said, and hung up. New scene. It's still November 1st. It's Tuesday morning. South Keno Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Gabe grunted when his phone went off. He'd thought because he'd been sick that he'd be allowed to at least sleep in. He buried his head and ignored the call, hoping to get in 15 more minutes of sleep. Drawing a deep breath, he fell right back to sleep. But only a few seconds later, the phone went off again. Sighing, he intended to ask if he could take off half a day. He reached for his phone and squinted at the caller. It was his sister, Daisy, and suddenly he was alert and sat straight up. His mom must have gone into early labor. Hey, Gabe said, is Mom okay? Yes, but Aunt Lisa is not. We need prayer, and we need it fast. What happened? She was on the way to the hospital in an ambulance to have the babies, and a cement truck hit the ambulance. Gabe jumped from the bed and pulled on some jeans. Are they alive? I honestly don't know. Daisy's voice broke, and she cried while telling all she knew. Aunt Jody is calling everyone at church and the family. I need you, Gabe, to get the prayer warriors going and call Isla. I'm on it, Gabe said as he sat to put on his shoes. He ended the call and immediately went to his website and hit the button for the prayer warriors, told what he knew, and asked for prayers. Then he called Isla, who was, as always, ready to help. She asked him to zoom in so she could capture the video of him explaining what had taken place, explain how much he loved and cared for his Aunt Lisa, and how they were like his family, and how Uncle Chaz actually delivered him when he was born. She immediately made a breaking news story and put it up. That done, Gabe grabbed a t-shirt and headed downstairs. You need to go right back to bed, Mrs. Keno stated firmly when she saw him coming down. We have a problem, he said immediately. Aunt Lisa was on her way to the hospital in an ambulance to have the babies, and the ambulance was hit by a cement truck. Daisy said that Rose said that Lena said that the ambulance flipped several times. Bree's eyes immediately filled with tears. Oh, no. She stopped what she was doing and dried her hands. We need to start a prayer circle. Young Eric stood. I'll get Jordan and Taylor. Okay, and I'll get your dad. But, Mom, he just went to bed. Well, he would be very disappointed in me to know that I didn't include him because I thought he might be tired. Young Eric nodded. Okay, you're right. Bree looked at Gabe. You start praying right now. We'll be back in a minute. In force. Yes, ma'am. Gabe looked down at his phone as his website and social media notifications began to blow up. He remembered that Grandmaster Keno might be waiting for him, and he needed to let him know what was going on. And just as he had that thought, his phone rang. Grandmaster Keno, I was just about to call you. Well, Jeffy just woke me up and said there's an emergency back home. Yes, sir. He went on to tell him what had taken place. Well, I'll call everyone I know and put out word in my studios to include the Stewarts in their prayers. Thank you, sir. Gabe, Jeffy, said that God is with them, and they're going to be all right. Gabe felt immediate relief. Well, that's good to know, sir. Thank you. Oh, and sir, about training today. Jeffy already told me that you were ill last night. Take the day off. Tomorrow, too. There are more important things than a tournament. New scene. We're back in Pine Forest. Rose hung up from speaking with Daisy and looked over at her driver. There's a little memorial site a few miles more on the right-hand side. It was like a cross and a brass sign and a bench. She said they're just past that. Jericho nodded. Call Jimmy. Hey, JJ, what's up? Did you find a place yet? Code red, might need stabilization of crashed vehicle, an ambulance carrying one patient with 2 unborn children, also might need a spreader. Highway 29, they were headed north toward Pine County Hospital. We're on the way. Jericho looked over at Rose. She stared straight ahead and was speaking softly, mouthing words he imagined she was praying. They're at the motel on 29, so they won't be long, he informed her. She nodded. There, she suddenly said, pointing at the small memorial. A second later, they came around a curve and saw a cement truck in the middle of the road and the Stewart car parked on the shoulder of the road. He swung over, pulled back into the street, backed toward the downed ambulance, jumped from his truck, and rushed down the embankment to assess the situation. The vehicle was lying on its side, the driver's side up in the air. The driver's side was crushed. The driver was not currently in sight. The front windshield was gone, and Jericho could see Chaz standing inside, his feet on the passenger side door. He was trying to communicate with his wife through a tiny window. He could hear Mrs. Stewart speaking to her husband. The front of the vehicle was facing the embankment, the back facing the street. Jericho circled quickly back around to where Charlie and Milena were trying to use a tire iron to pry open the back door to the ambulance. Jericho already knew that would be next to impossible. Matt stood nearby, his arm around his little sister, who was currently sobbing. "Charlie, Lena," he said firmly, "move back so I can see." In shock, they did as ordered. Jericho looked over the situation. The back door was actually bent out at the bottom. He looked through the window of the ambulance. He could see the gurney on its side, and Mrs. Stewart still strapped to it. She was moving, speaking to her husband. He could barely see the legs of the EMT, almost out of sight, which meant she was probably up against the back door. Her legs were not moving. He went around again to the front of the vehicle, getting a better view from farther down the hill. Shaking his head, he headed back to his truck. "Rose, get Lena and her siblings away from the vehicle," he ordered as he went by. Rose nodded and gave orders immediately, and they gathered off to the side of the ambulance about 20 feet away. He grabbed a tow strap from the bed of his truck, secured it, and ran down the hill to the ambulance and secured it to the vehicle. He then went back to his truck, got in, and pulled slowly away and to the left to take up the slack. And once he felt the vehicle was secured, Jericho went back to speak with Chaz Stewart. "Mr. Stewart, is she coherent?" "Honey, I'll be right back." Chaz backed out of the ambulance through the opening where the front windshield used to be and turned to face Jericho. Jericho looked him over. He was in shock. John Apple had told Jericho that Chaz had once been a paramedic and that he quit due to PTSD. Jericho also realized that the cause of the PTSD was what happened to his first wife and daughter, and that happened just a few feet from this very spot. The man looked up at him with hope in his eyes, so Jericho did his best to make him feel that everything would be okay. One way would be to give him something to concentrate on. "Is she coherent?" Jericho asked. He nodded. "She seems to be, but she's in pain." "Does she have any visible wounds?" "Well, there's a lot of blood on her face, so possible head wounds. But the pain seems to be because she's in labor." Jericho nodded. "Okay, we're going to get her out," he assured him. "She's going to be fine. The other EMT inside, is she moving at all?" Chaz shook his head. "No, but she is talking. She thinks her back is broken and she can't move. She may not have long." Jericho nodded. "Rose, did they give you an ETA?" "The other Pine Forest station was out on another call, and they said it could be 15 minutes. Jericho didn't think they had 15 minutes, and at that point, Lisa screamed her husband's name as if to prove him right. "Chaz! They're coming!" She began to sob. "Dear Jesus, please help my babies. Chaz, the babies are coming. I can't get loose. I have to get to my back to give them room." Jericho nodded. He knew she was right, and that the babies will be suffocated, or even crushed, if they came into the world the way Lisa Stewart was wedged on her side, strapped, with a gurney at her back and the roof of the ambulance in front of her. "Charlie," Jericho said, "take off your jacket. Matt, you too." The jackets were quilted vests, like the one he wore himself, and they would be perfect for the job he had in mind. Jericho ran up to his truck and came back with an orange-colored device in his hand. He looked the group over. "I'm too big. Lena, you're too tall. Who's stronger, Rose or Charlie?" The two looked at each other. "I am," Charlie said. Rose nodded. Jericho put the device against the laminated glass of the window in the back door of the ambulance. "Listen to me. I'm going to cut out this glass. Chaz, as soon as I do, you put your coat over the edge and boost Charlie up and through the window." Jericho handed Charlie a small cutting tool. Put that in your pocket. As soon as you get in there, your mission is to either unbuckle or cut the straps that are holding your mom to the gurney and then pull the gurney away from her and roll her to her back. Can you do it? Yes, sir. When you go in, be careful not to step on the other lady. She's right by the door. Charlie nodded. Jericho looked up as he saw the flashing blue lights of the police, but turned back to concentrate on what he was doing. He was grateful when Rose intercepted the officers and let them know that it was a first responder specialist paramedic that was working the scene. 30 seconds later, Chaz was placing his coat across the edge of the glass. He then turned and helped Charlie through the window, just as Lisa screamed again and then begged, "Please, Chaz, save the babies." A few seconds later, Charlie was inside the ambulance. "Charlie, the straps will be about where her chest is, then waist, and then knees. Try to reach around her first and see if they will unlatch." "I got that one," Charlie called out. "Good, son. Get the one at her waist," Chaz said. "I got it, and the one at her legs isn't on her." "Okay now," Chaz said. "Can you pull the gurney away from her?" He grunted and pulled it away and shoved it toward the front of the ambulance. Jericho turned to Rose. "My guys will be here any minute. Go tell them to bring the spreader down here, stat." Rose nodded and went up to the street. She got there just in time to see Sheriff Tyson drive up. He jumped out and asked Rose the situation. She quickly explained it. Back at the ambulance, "Okay, Charlie, you're doing a great job. Now is the most important part," Jericho said. "You're going to help to roll your mama onto her back very slowly and very gently." Charlie nodded, but tears were streaming down his face. Lena had hold of Matt's and Erlen's hands, and all three were kneeling beside the ambulance, praying. "Lisa," Chaz said through the small window, "we need you to turn onto your back very slowly. Charlie's going to help you." Lisa whimpered, "Okay." "Charlie, listen to me now," Jericho said. "This is important. As soon as she rolls to her back, you have to look and see if the baby is already out or coming out. Can you do that?" Charlie nodded. "Okay. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, Jericho said. "Roll her now." Lisa groaned as she rolled onto her back, and the hardest contraction she'd ever felt hit. "Charlie, you have to look now. Move the sheet and pull your mom's clothing away from her. What do you see?" I think I see the baby. It's coming out right now." Jericho nodded. That's exactly what he thought would happen. "Chaz, here, hand him his jacket." "Charlie," Jericho said, "real fast now. Hold your jacket under where the baby's coming out. Use both hands. Just let the baby come out on its own, and when he's all the way out, wrap the jacket around him." "It's coming," Charlie said. Lisa was crying. "Mom," Lena called, "you're going to be okay. Hold on, Mom. The other paramedic guys just got here, and they're going to get this door open." "He's out," Charlie said. "It's the boy. He's out." "Charlie, is he breathing?" "I don't know. He's making sounds." Yes, he's breathing." "Okay, good, Charlie. That sheet that you moved off your mom, can you reach it?" "Yes, sir." "Well, grab it with one hand, but make sure you have the baby in your other arm nice and secure so you don't drop him." "Good. Now grab the sheet and place it on the floor there, right between your mom's legs." "Yes, just like that. Now look and see if you see the other baby coming." "No, not yet." "We're here, JJ." Jericho looked up over his shoulder at his friend and co-worker and moved out of the way. "Get this door open. There's a victim just on the other side. We think still alive, possibly broken back. Charlie's inside with his mother, helping her to deliver twins." Jimmy nodded. "Got it." "Charlie, they're going to use a hydraulic spreader to open this door. Don't let the sound scare you." The baby he held began to cry, and at the same time he looked down in horror to see the other baby coming. "Dad, the other baby is starting to come out." "Okay, listen, Charlie," Jericho said. "First, lay your brother up on your mom's chest." "Mrs. Stewart, are you awake and alert?" "Yes, I can hold him," she said as she placed her hand on her child. Chaz handed him the other jacket. "Charlie, just like before, take this jacket and hold it where the baby's head is coming out." Jericho yelled above the noise of the spreader. Lisa whimpered as her body squeezed out the baby. Tears ran down her face, and she prayed again that God would save her babies. "This one is so little," Charlie called out. "It's coming out. It's almost out." The ambulance shifted a bit, and the men paused their work on the door. "Don't stop," Jericho shouted. "It isn't going anywhere." "The baby's out," Charlie yelled just as the door came open. Firefighter specialist Jimmy entered the ambulance immediately, grabbed the gurney in the back, and found a backboard on the left wall, which was currently the ceiling. Another specialist, Max, knelt down beside the fallen EMT and bent his head down by her ear. "Hey there, sweetie. We're going to get you out of here. Can you tell me what your name is?" She drew a few breaths before she spoke. "Sarah," she whispered. "Okay, Sarah, are you in any pain?" "No, I can't move," she said as tears ran down her cheeks. "Lisa, how's Lisa?" "Mrs. Stewart is doing fine." "Her babies," Sarah whispered. "She has 2 fine, healthy babies," Max answered. Sarah sniffed. "How about Martin?" she asked, her voice breaking as she asked the question, showing that she already knew it was bad. "We have some guys working on Martin," Max assured, though he knew Martin had not been found yet. He stood and moved out of the way a second so that Jericho could enter the small space. Jericho immediately went to Charlie and lifted the smaller baby from him. She was moving, she was breathing. He looked her over and placed her next to her twin brother on Lisa's chest. "Charlie, you did a great job. I need to get where you are. Can you go back out through that window so that they don't have to move out of your way?" "Yes, sir," Charlie said, and quickly climbed out the window into the arms of his father, brother, and sisters. "Chaz," Lisa called softly, her voice weak. "I'm here, Red. I'm right here. I'm really tired." "I bet. You rest now, baby." She sniffed. I'm afraid to fall asleep." Chaz knew exactly why she felt that way. He drew a deep breath. It was time for his faith to kick in. "Well, don't be afraid, my love. You'll either wake up in my arms or in the arms of Jesus. Either way, it's a good deal, right?" Lisa gave a weak laugh. "You are absolutely right, my cowboy. I love you, Red. If I don't make it, Chaz, if I don't make it, promise me you won't fall apart. Promise me you'll be strong for my babies." "Well, I'm not sure that I can promise you that, so I'm going to need for you to be strong and come home and take care of these babies for me." "I'll try," she whispered. "You do that. And while we're waiting, me and the kids, we're going to kneel down for a minute, okay?" "Okay. I wish I could join you," she said so softly that they couldn't hear her. The family quietly knelt down and prayed together for their mother and their new siblings. Lisa sniffed back some tears. "Mrs. Stewart, your family is praying. Why don't you and I pray too? I'll pray while I work on you, and you just close your eyes and listen, okay?" "Okay," she whispered. Jericho prayed aloud, and at the same time tended to Lisa Stewart, examining her head for injuries since there was blood all over her face. Meanwhile, Max and Jimmy got Sarah stabilized onto the backboard and onto the gurney. Finally, Pine County paramedics pulled up. Sarah was immediately loaded and taken to the hospital while they brought a gurney for Lisa. She opened her eyes as they lifted her. "Mrs. Stewart, you're going to be okay," Jericho assured her. He hoped it was true because her blood pressure was low, dangerously low. "And your babies are small, but doing well," Jericho nodded at the paramedics. "Start an IV, pressure's low." The paramedics, while on the phone with Lisa's doctor, started the IV and called out her vitals and did what the doctor ordered them to do. While they did that, Jericho checked the babies again. Both were pink, both breathing normally. This was a blessing. It was really a miracle. "Don't we, need to cut the cords?" He looked up to see Lena peeking through the window. "No, it's better for the kids to leave them intact for now," Jericho answered her. He moved out of the way while Lisa, with her 2 babies lying on her chest, was strapped onto a gurney. They moved her out of the wrecked vehicle, and her family crowded around her as Rose stood nearby. Lisa opened her eyes and smiled at them. "Mom, you're going to be okay," Lena promised. Lisa nodded. "I know, sweetie. Thanks so much for being such a good help." "Mommy," Erilyn cried. Charlie lifted her up. Here, kiddo, kiss Mommy, and they're going to take her to the hospital and make her better. Lisa smiled at her daughter. Hey, baby girl, I love you. Be good, okay? I will, I promise, she said in her sweet voice. Chaz bent over and kissed his wife briefly on her lips, then placed a soft kiss on the head of each baby. A blessing on you, in Jesus' name, he whispered. Lisa, we'll be right behind you. Lisa gave a short laugh. Again, no one else laughed. She was loaded into another ambulance and rushed to the Pine County Hospital, where her doctor was waiting for her, along with the NICU doctors and nurses. Jericho stood next to Chaz and his family, and they watched as the sheriff made his way down the hill to speak to Chaz. Chaz, Tyson said solemnly. He looked around at his nieces and nephews. Kids, you okay? Yes, sir, they mumbled. Chaz nodded at Jericho. Jericho, this is Tyson Stewart. He's my little brother. Jericho extended his hand, which Tyson shook immediately. Jericho, I heard about you, and it's good to meet you, and I can't thank you enough for what you did here today. He shook his head and gave the usual answer, just doing my job, and glad I was around to help. Chaz nodded. It was a miracle you were around to help, and I am extremely grateful. My mind was scrambled, and all I could think was... Don't go there, Chaz, Ty said quickly. Jericho looked Chaz over. Let me have one of my guys drive you and your family to the hospital. Chaz smiled. That's a kind offer, but I'm okay to drive. He held out his hand. See? Not even shaking. Jericho smiled and nodded. A deputy approached. Sheriff, we found the driver. He's deceased. Jericho sighed. He glanced up to the road to see a few of his guys and a few of the dispatched paramedics working to get the driver of the cement truck out of his cab. He nodded toward the action. Was he injured? Tyson shook his head. No, they think it was a heart attack. As of right now, he's still alive. Jericho sighed. So, out of a possible 6 victims, we lost 1. Yeah, let's hope it stays that way, Ty mumbled. Chaz nodded in agreement. Okay, kiddos, let's load up. Jericho stood alone and watched as the family got in the car and drove away, hoping this time for a better outcome. Lord, I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to help here today, and thank you for the outcome. Father, if it be your will, bless the Stewart family and let those babies and their mother be just fine. And Lord, bless Miss Sarah with healing and the driver of the cement truck too. And bless Martin's family, Father, with peace and comfort. In Jesus' powerful name, amen. The prayer was barely whispered, and he finished it with a nod. 2 industrial tow trucks had arrived and were ambling for position, and Jericho was asked to move his truck. He nodded, unhitched the tow strap, gathered his tools, and threw them in the back of his truck. Up at the street, cops were ushering traffic around the right side of the cement truck. Even on a rural state highway like this one, traffic had backed up fairly quickly. He moved his truck about 50 feet away, got out, and came back to the site. He went straight to where his guys were standing in a circle, discussing what had taken place. Hey, guys, he offered his hand to each one. I just want to say thanks for your assistance. It's what we do, Jimmy said. Jericho nodded. So, have you seen a gorgeous blonde walking around here? Sure did. Why? You call dibs on her? Well, since she rode here with me, yeah. He scanned the area again, but didn't see her, then looked back at his friends, who were also his employees. There's a few more just like her if you guys are interested, but don't make a nuisance of yourselves. They all belong to Keegan Tanner, who is Gabe Tanner's father, and we all know that you don't mess around with that man. He looked around again, then up toward the highway. What happened, JJ? Did she ditch you? Jalen quipped. He sighed. Maybe, but she doesn't seem like the type to do that, so I'm more worried than insulted. I mean, she wouldn't take off without someone, without at least letting me know. How do you know she's not the type? Well, she runs the community center. She's very businesslike and responsible. Jimmy laughed. Sounds like a match made in heaven. Jericho shook his head. It's not like that. I just met her. She's interesting and easy on the eyes. That's it. Our next gig is in Nashville, so a relationship is out. You know, bro, you ain't getting any younger. You got to settle down eventually, Micah said. So do you, Jericho countered. So do we all, Max said quietly, which is why it's time to hire employees and expand the company. It's time, JJ, he said quietly. Jericho sighed and nodded. Maybe it is. We'll see. Right now, though, I need to find Rose. Can't you just call her? Luke asked. I haven't gotten that far yet. Jalen laughed. You don't have her digits? We've had coffee, that's it. And that was interrupted by this call. Jericho sighed. So, will you guys please shut up, spread out, and help me find her? Well, she was talking mighty cozy with that sheriff. That sheriff is old enough to be her father and is the brother of Mr. Stewart. Jimmy laughed. Small towns, everybody's related in some way. Jericho frowned. Spread out, he ordered, before he walked away searching for Rose. He looked out near the street, around where the ambulance had wrecked, and finally went up to ask Sheriff Tyson. Jericho, Ty said as he approached, just want to say thanks again for your help. No need for thanks. Have you seen Rose? I came here with her, and she seems to have disappeared. Ty nodded his head. She got a call and excused herself and walked that direction, I suppose to hear better or for some privacy. He pointed behind Jericho. There's a memorial just around the curve. She's probably over there. Jericho nodded. Thank you, sir, he said as he hurried away. He walked quickly around the curve, and sure enough, there she was, pacing back and forth with the phone to her ear. Immediately, he sighed in relief, took out his phone, and sent a text to his guys, letting them know that he'd found her. He approached her, and she looked up and then held up a finger. Yes, tomorrow, and thanks so much for understanding. Okay, see you in the morning. Rose smiled. Hey, Jericho. Sorry you had to come looking for me. I got a call and another, and I sometimes walk when I talk, and I ended up over here. No problem. I was just a little worried when I couldn't find you. Aw, how sweet. You were worried about me. He smiled. Her comment had been flirty, but her expression was one of weariness. Rose, I have a feeling that the Stewarts are going to be just fine. She nodded. I do too. I've been praying, and I get a feeling of peace come over me. And then I stop praying and go immediately back to worrying. I bet God is getting sick of my lack of faith. I bet he's used to all of us humans being human. She nodded. Thanks for that. He looked around at the polished wooden bench with a small brass plaque that read, in loving memory of Carrie and Julie Stewart. The bench had a couple of plant stands on either side with bouquets of silk flowers. This looks like a brand new memorial, but I've actually heard about what happened, and I know it was over 20 years ago. Rose nodded. Uncle Chaz almost never spoke about it. Not everybody knew about it, but suddenly, a few months ago, out of the blue, this memorial appeared. We don't know who put it up, but I know the Stewarts, Uncle Chaz, and his parents and siblings come by every once in a while to sit and pray. Interesting. Any idea who did it? She smiled. I have an idea, but I think they'd like to remain anonymous. He nodded. Gotcha. So I'm guessing you missed your appointments today? Yes, but I've rescheduled. I'm going to head up to the hospital later. Right now, Aunt Jody is going. That's John Apple's wife, right? Yes, she's Aunt Lisa's best friend. She's also my mother's best friend. Well, she's pretty much everybody's best friend. She's the coolest lady. She never gets tired of of helping others. Well, it sounds like she and her husband are very much alike then. Rose nodded. Her husband is my father's best friend. They served in the Marines together, Special Forces. Very lethal guys, and yet so full of love. They make me believe that there are still good men out there. Jericho nodded. And you said earlier that if you could have a marriage like your parents, then you'd be happy. She nodded. And? And you said that means you need to find a man like your father. She nodded again. That's a pretty hard reputation to live up to. She shrugged. Yeah, he may have ruined me for pretty much any man. She smiled. Though you have a good start, she said with a laugh, and then quickly changed the subject. Are you ready to head back? I have a lot to do. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. She talked as they walked. So, Jericho Jones, I just want to say thank you for Well, for everything you and your guys did today. No big deal. It's what we do. There's no need for thanks. Yes, there is. You took charge. You ordered people around. You didn't become emotional or flustered. You were everybody's rock, even Uncle Chaz. He used to be a paramedic, but you helped him through this in such a gentle way. Well, when people you love are in danger, sometimes your mind shuts down, and I happen to know about Mr. Stewart's past, so I simply offered direction that he could focus on. He had already lost a wife and child at almost the same place on the road. His family was in danger of being torn apart. But they weren't, thanks to you. Thanks to God. What I did was just secure the scene and order people around. But those twins being born with no medical emergency, that is a miracle. Those babies were premature by 7 weeks, I was told. But they seemed healthy and normal, just small. And Mrs. Stewart having no more than a few small cuts on her head, that too is a miracle. I can tell just from the condition of the ambulance. God did that. And then he used me to just help out. I'm glad God led me to be around when this happened, that you were in my truck when Milena called you, and that I was able to help. You did your job well. Your guys too. I think our firefighters are in good hands, Rose said. I believe that too. And that's why I asked to do what I do. No. And I believe that too, and that's why I do what I do, so that every firefighter who wants to learn has an opportunity to do so, and that will save more lives and help more people. Rose's phone buzzed, and she looked at the caller ID and smiled. Hello there, sweetie, she said. Hey, Rose, so what's the news? Gabe asked. I'm sorry I didn't call you back. I've been busy, and I thought Daisy would call you. Aunt Lisa is alive and well. She gave birth while she was stuck in that overturned ambulance. And the babies are okay? Yes. God is so awesome. Yes, and he had some helpers, like Charlie, crawled in through a small window and helped deliver the babies. Charlie? Wow, how cool is that? Right? And then there was the man who was standing right next to me, Jericho Jones. Cool name. What did he do? Well, he's the one who got Charlie to crawl in there and deliver the babies. He's come to our town to help the firefighters. He's a master firefighter, a master EMT, and special ops firefighter. And he has a company that goes around training paramedics and firefighters. And the moment the accident happened, he turned his truck around and got there. If not for him, I don't think the babies would have survived. Well, then we can thank God for him, too. Yep. And just as a side note, he's a twin, just like I am, and his brother is Joshua Jones. Joshua Jones, like the football player? Yes, one and the same. Cool. And Jericho is highly impressed by you. By me? Yes, you, silly. He's been watching you and your adventures. Is that your brother? Jericho asked. Yes, why? You want to talk to him? Sure. Just put it on speaker and let's get in the truck. He opened her door and she climbed in. He got in and started the truck. So, am I on speaker? Gabe asked. Yes. Hello, Gabe Tanner. It's nice to meet you. Hello, Jericho Jones. It's nice to meet you, too. Rose tells me that you helped out with the Stewarts, so thanks for that. Just doing my job, he said quietly. Gabe laughed. Yep, that was the correct response. Jericho gave a soft laugh. I just wanted to say, Gabe, that I was impressed by you and the faith you showed when you were abducted, and since then, all the things that have happened. The guys and I, we follow you, and you're a very special young man. I don't know about all that, but thanks. So, why is my sister in your truck? Are you dating my sister? Gabriel Tanner, you stop it, Rose said quickly. It was just an innocent question, Gabe said with a chuckle. Jericho smiled. Well, we've only had coffee, just earlier this morning before Lena called, and then we hurried out to the accident. I don't even have her digits yet, as my friends so brutally pointed out to me a few minutes ago. Well, I hope you're going to remedy that quickly, Gabe responded. Stop it, Rose said firmly. I intend to, Jericho said, as if Rose hadn't spoken. And be very nice to her because she's an awesome girl, and I'd hate to have to hunt you down and shoot the brother of Joshua Jones. Gabriel Tanner, next time I see you, I'll shoot you myself, Rose exclaimed loudly, making both Gabe and Jericho laugh. Aren't you supposed to be training or something? Normally, yes, but I was sick last night and was given the... Sick? With what? Do you have a fever? Has Jeffy seen you? Yes, sick, with the norovirus. Not anymore, and no, but yes. What do you mean, no, but yes? Jeffy did a remote viewing kind of thing, so she didn't see me in person, but she did see me. She said it was a norovirus and that I would be well by morning, and I was, and so was Taylor, and so was Mrs. Keno. Ooh, you all had it? Bless y'all's hearts. Gabe chuckled. You sound like Mom. Anyway, Jeffy also told Grandmaster Keno this morning that Aunt Lisa and the babies were going to be okay. Oh, I love that, Rose said softly. Me too. Jeffy's very cool, and she says that she is very in tune with me for some reason, but maybe it's because she's so connected to her dad, and so am I. Yeah, maybe. So tell us, Gabe, what do you have planned for the rest of the day? Well, I have to escort Taylor tonight onto the football field because it's homecoming, and she's part of the homecoming court. Oh, awesome. But Gabe, you know you have to wear a suit, right? Yes, Rose, I'm not an idiot. Besides, Taylor has already made sure that I have the right clothes, and also that we don't clash, because she hates when people clash. Rose giggled. Well, what color is she wearing? She is wearing midnight blue. So, like a navy blue? Oh, no, that's what I said, but she insisted it's midnight blue, and it's different than navy blue. Rose laughed. That Taylor is a trip. I like her so much. Me too. How much do you like her, Gabe? Now you stop. Oh, come on. Do you think one day you guys will get married? He was silent a moment. I hope so. I know we're young and she's still in high school, but if we make it past all that, there's a strong possibility that she'll be your sister-in-law. What do you think about that? I think whatever makes you happy makes me happy. Cool, sis, but I'm sure Jericho didn't get on the phone to hear some sappy love story. Jericho laughed. Oh, there's nothing sappy about love. Still, so you ready for the big mini-mart? Yep, feel good, feel strong. I'm ready to kick some butt. We'll be watching and rooting for you, big guy. Thanks. I think Joe's is doing a thing, and also the Wings place, and Allie's Steakhouse, and the Inn, of course, and my family. I'll keep that in mind, Jericho said dryly as Rose smiled. Okay, well, I'm hanging up because I have to tell people over here in Cali what's happening with the Stewarts. Bye, Rosie and Jericho. Can't wait to meet you in person when I get back there in a few weeks. Will you still be there? Yes, I'm here until after the first of the year. Cool. Then TTYL, he ended the call. Rose smiled as Jericho pulled up in front of the community center and turned off the engine. That boy, he just makes me laugh. I miss him so much. Jericho nodded. He's a light, a real light to this world. That's why the people of the world either love him or try to get rid of him. Do you listen to his daily videos? Rose shook her head. Not always. I've been so busy. To be honest, lately, I've only seen about 2 in as many weeks. Well, you should watch. He only speaks for a few minutes. The power he has is evident. He speaks about normal stuff, like what he's going to do that day. But he's humble about it, and he's funny, he's entertaining, and then it never fails. Somewhere in what he's saying, you think, oh, yeah, I should be more like that, or I should do something like that. He inspires people to be better people without even knowing he's doing it, and he's ultra popular. Yeah, part of that is his good looks and bright personality, but people crave his light. He brings them closer to God. A lot of them probably don't even know that's what he's doing. So when he goes live, immediately there are thousands of people watching. One time I was one of the first to click on when he went live out, and there were only a few hundred, and I was fascinated watching it jump to 2,000, and then suddenly 8,000, and then 20,000. It was crazy. So what was the most recent one you watched? Yesterday. I pretty much watch him every day. Oh, well, what did he talk about yesterday? Rose asked. He just got into the studio to train, and he was running late because he saw this dog running along the highway dragging his leash, and he thought the dog had gotten away from its owner and was going to get hit by a car. So he pulled over, and for some reason the dog stopped running and just looked at him. He said he knelt down, and the dog came right to him, and he was able to grab the leash. He was looking at the dog tags for a phone number, but a man came running down the street and claimed the dog. Gabe told him his name, and the guy said he knew about Gabe. He then thanked Gabe profusely and said his dog would usually never run up to a stranger and that Gabe must have a piece of meat in his pocket. Rose laughed. Okay, that's interesting and funny. But what's so inspiring about that? Is it because he stopped to help? Well, that is cool, but that's not the inspiring part. He said when he was looking at the dog tags, the thought came to him about how we all belong to God, and our dog tags get placed around our necks every time we pray because it connects us to Him. And then he said, some of us wear crosses to acknowledge our belief in Jesus, and those are kind of like our dog tags too. But then he said that God usually knows those of us who are His, no tag required. And then he flashed that smile and shrugged and said, I guess my mind is all over the place this morning. I'm late, so y'all have a good day. And that was it. He signed off and probably had no idea that the things he said are so inspirational. And you should have seen the comment section blow up. So, Rose thought, and then counted on her fingers. 1, he stopped to help, so that's showing how to be in service to others. The dog came to him with no fear, so maybe the dog recognized God's light in Gabe. The guy had heard of Gabe, and so Gabe stopping to help shows that he's the real deal. And then he gives a little sermon about us all belonging to God and that God knows each of us personally. And then he ends the whole thing with how his mind is all over the place, which shows humility. She nodded. He's a great kid. You should go back and watch the videos, Rose. The ones you haven't seen, you can access all of them through his website, which, by the way, is state-of-the-art and well-run. Rose nodded. I will do that. I feel bad that a perfect stranger has to tell me to watch my own brother's videos. Well, I'm not a perfect stranger anymore, and people get busy, so no big deal. He smiled at her. And now I'd like to remedy a situation, as Gabe put it, and get your number. Hand me your phone, she said. He unlocked it and handed it to her, and she punched in the numbers and called herself. She grinned up at him. So now you know I didn't ghost you by giving you the wrong number. His brows shot up. Well, it never occurred to me that you would do that, so now you've got me on edge. She giggled. Just where I want you. He smiled. Well, I'll be calling you soon, Rose. She rolled her eyes at the pet name he'd already given her. I'm on pins and needles. Really? She laughed. What do you think? She turned and walked away, and he watched her all the way into the building before he started his truck and pulled away. That is the end of chapter 14. Whew.